The Vidian spacecraft plummets through Earth's atmosphere, its occupant unaware of the chaos about to unfold. Iris, a female Vidian in the throes of her species' intense mating cycle, grips her seat as alarms blare. The ship's systems fail, sending it careening towards a remote forest outside Seattle, Washington. Impact. Metal twists and groans. Smoke rises from the wreckage as Iris stumbles out, her alien form silhouetted against the smoldering debris. Her biology screams for companionship, for reproduction, but her pheromones fall flat in Earth's unfamiliar air. Miles away, Kyle Turner's radio crackles to life. The 28-year-old park ranger listens intently to reports of a mysterious crash. Duty calls, and he sets out to investigate, unaware of the extraordinary encounter awaiting him. Iris wanders through the dense forest, her distress growing with each passing moment. Her mating instincts, usually precise and controlled, now spiral into desperate need. She searches for males, any males, to satisfy her biological imperative. Kyle arrives at the crash site, his flashlight beam cutting through the settling dust. He spots Iris, her alien features both fascinating and terrifying. She turns, sensing his presence, and launches herself towards him with unbridled intensity. Shocked, Kyle stumbles backward as Iris attempts to initiate mating behaviors. Her movements are urgent, primal, and utterly foreign. Kyle's mind races, torn between duty and self-preservation. He retreats, fumbling for his radio to call for backup. In a secret government facility, alarms blare. Monitors display the alien craft's trajectory and crash site. Colonel James Hartley receives his orders. Contain the situation at all costs. He assembles his team, their black vehicles racing towards the forest under cover of night. Iris's agitation grows. Her mating cycle reaches a critical point, clouding her judgment. She pursues Kyle, driven by an instinct stronger than reason or caution. Kyle, feeling a mix of fear and unexpected sympathy, makes a split-second decision. He can't leave her to face capture alone. "This way," he calls, gesturing deeper into the forest. Iris follows, her alien eyes locked onto Kyle's retreating form. Behind them, the sound of approaching vehicles grows louder. On Iris's home planet, a silent alarm triggers an emergency session of the Vidian High Council. They debate furiously, weighing the risks of exposure against the life of one of their own. Rescue or containment? The fate of two worlds hangs in the balance. News of the crash spreads like wildfire through online forums and conspiracy theorist circles. UFO enthusiasts flood social media with speculation and grainy photos. The government's task grows more complicated by the minute. As darkness falls, Kyle leads Iris to an abandoned ranger station. Her mating cycle peaks, filling the small space with an almost tangible tension. Kyle's resolve wavers, his human instincts warring with his sense of duty. Colonel Hartley's team discovers the empty crash site. Their orders are clear. Capture the alien, eliminate all witnesses. They fan out into the forest, a net closing around Kyle and Iris. In the ranger station, two beings from different worlds face an impossible situation. Outside, forces converge that could reshape the future of human-alien relations. The night is young, and the story of Iris, the alien girl in mating season, stranded on Earth, is only beginning. As night faded into dawn, the abandoned ranger station stirred with life. Kyle's eyes fluttered open, his mind struggling to process the events of the previous night. Beside him, Iris shifted, her alien form a stark reminder of their extraordinary circumstances. Kyle sat up, rubbing his eyes. "We need to move," he whispered, more to himself than to Iris. But as he turned to face her, he froze. Iris's skin seemed to shimmer in the early morning light, and an unmistakable scent filled the air. Iris locked eyes with Kyle, her gaze intense and primal. She reached out, her fingers barely brushing his arm. The touch sent a jolt through Kyle's body, igniting sensations he'd never experienced before. "What's happening?" Kyle muttered, his heart racing. He tried to focus, to remember his training, his duty, but Iris's presence overwhelmed his senses. Iris moved closer, her movements fluid and purposeful. Kyle found himself drawn to her, his initial fear and hesitation melting away. He raised his hand, mimicking the gestures he'd used the night before to communicate. Iris responded, her alien features contorting into what Kyle interpreted as a smile. She pointed to herself, then to the sky, then to Kyle. Her movements became more elaborate, painting a picture of worlds beyond Earth. "You've been watching us?" Kyle asked, his voice a mix of awe and disbelief. Iris nodded, then pointed to herself again, miming the act of collecting something. Kyle's eyes widened with understanding. "You're here to study us," he said. Iris confirmed with another nod, then gestured to the wreckage outside. As Kyle processed this information, Iris inched closer. Her scent grew stronger, clouding his thoughts. He felt his pulse quicken, his body responding to her proximity in ways he couldn't control. "We shouldn't," Kyle whispered, but his actions betrayed his words. He reached out, his fingers tracing the contours of Iris's alien face. The touch sparked something primal in both of them. What followed was a blur of sensation and discovery, human and alien bodies intertwined, driven by a force that transcended species barriers. Kyle lost himself in the experience, all thoughts of duty and consequence fading away. As they lay together afterward, Kyle noticed subtle changes in Iris's appearance. Her skin seemed less translucent, her breathing more in sync with Earth's atmosphere. He wondered at the implications but had little time to dwell on them. A faint whirring sound from outside snapped them both to attention. Kyle peered through a crack in the station's boarded-up window and saw a sleek black drone hovering nearby. "We've been found," he hissed, adrenaline surging through his veins. He grabbed Iris's hand, pulling her to her feet. "There's a tunnel system under the station. It's our only chance." Kyle led Iris to a hidden trapdoor, concealed beneath years of dust and debris. As they descended into the darkness, the drone's whirring grew louder, joined by the distant sound of approaching vehicles. The tunnels were a maze of twists and turns, carved out decades ago as emergency routes for park rangers. Kyle navigated by memory and touch, one hand always on Iris, guiding her through the pitch-black passages. Behind them, echoes of pursuit grew louder. Flashlight beams pierced the darkness, accompanied by the sharp commands of Colonel Hartley's team. "This way," Kyle whispered, tugging Iris down a narrow side passage. The tunnel began to slope upward, the air growing thinner and colder. They emerged onto a rocky ledge, the forest stretching out below them. The mountain pass loomed ahead, a treacherous route that offered their only hope of escape. As they caught their breath, Kyle turned to Iris. In the growing light of dawn, he saw perseverance in her alien eyes. Whatever lay ahead, they would face it together. The sound of a helicopter cut through the air, growing louder by the second. Kyle grabbed Iris's hand once more, and they plunged into the rugged terrain of the mountain pass, their pursuers close behind. Unknown to them, high above Earth's atmosphere, a Vidayan ship began its descent. Zach stood at the helm, his eyes fixed on the coordinates where Iris's biological transmitter pulsed steadily. The extraction team's arrival would soon add another layer of complexity to the unfolding drama on Earth. As Kyle and Iris navigated the treacherous mountain path, the forest below buzzed with activity. Government vehicles converged on the area, while curious civilians gathered at the forest's edge, drawn by rumors of a UFO sighting. The sun climbed higher in the sky, illuminating a landscape transformed by the events of a single night. In the race between human and alien forces, the fate of Kyle and Iris hung in the balance, their unlikely bond now at the center of a potential interspecies conflict. As Kyle and Iris plunged into the rugged terrain of the mountain pass, the helicopter's roar faded behind them. The first rays of sunlight painted the sky in hues of pink and gold, illuminating the treacherous path ahead. Kyle's grip on Iris's hand tightened as they navigated the uneven ground. "We need to keep moving," he urged, his voice barely audible over their labored breathing. The tunnel system they had escaped through opened up to a steep, rocky incline. Kyle assessed the terrain, his ranger training kicking in. "We'll have to climb," he said, pointing to the exposed cliff face before them. Iris nodded, her alien eyes scanning the vertical surface. As they began their ascent, Kyle's experience proved invaluable. He guided Iris's hands and feet to secure holds, his movements sure and practiced. "That's it," Kyle encouraged, as Iris mimicked his technique. "Just like that." But as they climbed higher, Iris's movements became sluggish. Her breathing grew ragged, and her skin took on a pallid hue. Kyle noticed her struggle and paused on a narrow ledge. "Are you okay?" he asked, concern etched on his face. Iris shook her head, gesturing to her chest and then to the air around them. Kyle understood immediately. The thin mountain air was affecting her alien physiology. "We're almost there," Kyle assured her, pointing to a flat area above them. "Just a little further." They pressed on, Kyle constantly checking on Iris's condition. When they finally reached the plateau, Iris collapsed to her knees, her chest heaving. Kyle scanned their surroundings and spotted a structure in the distance. "Look," he said, helping Iris to her feet. "An old fire lookout tower. We can rest there." They made their way to the weather-beaten tower, its wooden frame a welcome sight after the harsh rock face. Inside, Kyle found a cache of emergency supplies, water, protein bars, and a first aid kit. As Iris recuperated, Kyle explored the small space. His eyes lit up when he spotted a long-range radio. He quickly powered it up, adjusting dials and frequencies. "This is Park Ranger Kyle Turner calling Park Superintendent Mark Thompson. Do you copy? Over?" Static filled the air. Kyle repeated his call, desperation creeping into his voice. But only the hiss of white noise answered him. Frustrated, Kyle set the radio aside. He turned to find Iris watching him intently. In the light filtering through the tower's windows, he noticed subtle changes in her appearance. Her skin seemed less translucent, its texture closer to human flesh. Iris moved closer, her alien scent filling Kyle's nostrils. The same primal attraction that had overwhelmed them in the ranger station returned with newfound intensity. Kyle felt his perseverance weakening as Iris reached out to touch his face. Their lips met, and the world fell away. Human and alien bodies intertwined once more, their shared passion transcending the barriers between their species. As they lay together afterward, Kyle marveled at the changes in Iris's body, her skin now almost indistinguishable from his own. Their moment of peace was shattered by the distant sound of voices. Kyle rushed to the window, his heart sinking as he saw figures moving through the forest below. "They've found the tunnel exit," he whispered. "We need to move." As they prepared to leave, Kyle gathered what supplies he could carry. He paused at the door, looking back at the radio. With a heavy heart, he realized it was their only chance to call for help. He couldn't leave it behind. Kyle and Iris emerged from the tower into the bright morning light. The voices grew louder, spurring them to move faster. They continued their ascent, the radio bouncing against Kyle's back with each step. Unbeknownst to the fleeing pair, their brief respite in the tower had triggered a surge in Iris's biological transmitter. The signal pulsed outward, detectable by both the human and Vidoyan forces, converging on their location. As they climbed higher, the air grew thinner. Kyle noticed Iris adapting more quickly now, her movements becoming more fluid and graceful. Her rapid evolution both fascinated and unnerved him. They reached a narrow ledge, barely wide enough for single file. Kyle led the way, his back pressed against the rock face. Suddenly, the sound of rotors filled the air. A black helicopter rose from below, hovering menacingly close. "Surrender now!" a voice boomed from a loudspeaker. "You have nowhere to go!" Kyle's mind raced, searching for an escape route. His eyes landed on a distant snowbank, far below but potentially deep enough to break their fall. It was a desperate plan, but their only option. He turned to Iris, gesturing urgently. "Do you trust me?" Iris nodded without hesitation. "Then jump!" Kyle shouted, grabbing Iris's hand and leaping from the ledge. They plummeted through the air, the wind rushing past them. For a heart-stopping moment, Kyle feared he had misjudged the distance. Then they hit the snowbank, the impact knocking the breath from their lungs. Disoriented but unharmed, they quickly disentangled themselves. Kyle marveled at Iris's newfound agility as she effortlessly regained her footing. They began sliding down the snowfield, using their momentum to put distance between themselves and their pursuers. Behind them, the mountain erupted in chaos. The clash of advanced Vidoyan weapons against human firearms lit up the sky. News helicopters appeared on the horizon, drawn by reports of strange lights and sounds. As they reached the base of the mountain, Kyle and Iris found themselves on the outskirts of a small logging town. The streets were empty in the early morning light, but Kyle knew it wouldn't last. "We need to blend in," he said, leading Iris towards a row of houses. And fast. With both human and alien forces closing in, and the world's attention turning to their location, Kyle and Iris faced their greatest challenge yet. They had to disappear into the human world, all while navigating their evolving relationship and Iris's continuing transformation. As they moved through the quiet streets, Kyle's mind raced with possibilities and dangers. The road ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear. Their adventure was not nearly finished. Over. Their journey was only beginning. As they crept through the shadowy streets of the logging town, Kyle's mind raced with possibilities. His ranger uniform stood out like a beacon in the dim light of dawn. "We need to change," he whispered to Iris, eyeing a thrift store across the street. "Come on." They made their way to the back of the store, Kyle's trained eyes scanning for security systems. Finding none, he picked the lock with practiced ease. Inside, they moved swiftly through racks of second-hand clothing. Kyle grabbed jeans and a flannel shirt for himself, while helping Iris select a simple dress and jacket. As they changed, Kyle couldn't help but marvel at Iris's continuing transformation. Her skin had taken on a more human-like texture, and her features seemed less otherworldly with each passing moment. Leaving a wad of crumpled bills on the counter, they slipped back into the street. Kyle pulled Iris close, his heart pounding as he saw a police cruiser roll by. But the officer's gaze passed over them without a second glance. "We need somewhere to lay low," Kyle murmured. Suddenly, a memory flashed in his mind. "Mike," he said, more to himself than Iris. "Mike Anderson. He might help us." They made their way to the outskirts of town, where modest houses gave way to workshops and garages. Kyle approached a weathered building with Anderson Auto Repair painted on the side. Knocking on the door, Kyle held his breath. After a long moment, it creaked open, revealing a grizzled man in his 60s. "Kyle?" Mike's eyes widened in surprise, then narrowed as he noticed Iris. "What's going on? Who's this?" "Mike, I need your help," Kyle said, his voice low and urgent. "Can we come in?" Inside, Kyle gave Mike a rushed explanation of the night's events. The old mechanic listened in stunned silence, his gaze flicking between Kyle and Iris. "Aliens?" Mike finally said, shaking his head. "Jesus, Kyle, you sure know how to pick 'em." Before Kyle could respond, a distant explosion rocked the air. They rushed to the window, watching as flashes of light illuminated the mountain they'd fled. "What the hell?" Mike muttered. Suddenly, every light in the house went out. Outside, car alarms fell silent, mid-wail. The hum of electricity that usually permeated the air vanished, leaving an eerie quiet. "EMP," Kyle said grimly. "Has to be the aliens." Mike's face hardened with commitment. "All right, you two need to get out of here. I've got a cabin up in the National Forest, off the grid. You'll be safe there." They moved quickly, loading supplies into Mike's old pickup truck. As they climbed in, the sound of panicked voices filled the air. Townsfolk were emerging from their homes, confused and frightened by the sudden blackout. Mike gunned the engine, and they sped out of town, leaving the chaos behind. As they drove deeper into the forest, the road became rougher, jostling the truck's occupants. In the cramped back seat, Kyle found himself pressed against Iris. Her scent filled his nostrils, clouding his thoughts. He felt a familiar heat rising within him, and saw the same hunger reflected in Iris's eyes. "Mike," Kyle managed to say, his voice strained. "How much further?" Mike glanced in the rearview mirror, his eyebrows rising as he took in the scene. "About 20 minutes, he said, turning his attention back to the road. "Try to keep it in your pants till then, will ya?" But it was a losing battle. As the truck bounced along the forest road, Kyle and Iris gave in to their desires. Their bodies intertwined, moving in rhythm with the vehicle's motion. Mike kept his eyes firmly on the road, muttering under his breath about kids these days and damned alien pheromones. As they neared the cabin, a faint glow filled the truck. Kyle broke away from Iris, his eyes widening as he saw her skin emitting a soft, pulsating light. "Iris," he breathed, "you're glowing." Before she could respond, Mike brought the truck to a stop. "We're here," he announced, pointedly avoiding looking in the back seat. They quickly made their way into the cabin, a rustic structure nestled among towering pines. As Mike busied himself with lighting lanterns, Kyle led Iris to a window, studying her luminescent skin in the fading daylight. "What's happening to you?" he asked softly, tracing the patterns of light that danced beneath her skin. Iris shook her head, her expression a mix of wonder and uncertainty. She placed a hand on Kyle's chest, and he felt a tingling warmth spread through his body. Their moment was interrupted by Mike's gruff voice. "You two should get some rest. Tomorrow, we'll figure out our next move." As night fell, Kyle and Iris settled onto a creaky old sofa, their bodies fitting together as if designed for each other. Outside, the forest was alive with the sounds of nocturnal creatures. Unknown to the trio in the cabin, 3 separate groups were converging on their location. Zax and his Vidian team moved silently through the underbrush, their advanced technology pinpointing Iris's unique biological signature. Colonel Hartley's forces, having regrouped after the EMP attack, were combing the area with night vision equipment. And from another direction, Dr. Elena Rodriguez led her team of scientists, their non-military vehicles carefully navigating the forest roads. Her eyes gleamed with excitement as her instruments detected the unprecedented energy readings emanating from the cabin. As Kyle drifted off to sleep, his arms wrapped protectively around Iris, he was unaware of the forces closing in around them. The cabin, once a peaceful retreat, now stood at the center of a looming confrontation that would shape the future of human-alien relations. In the darkness, Iris's glow intensified, pulsing like a beacon. Her transformation was nearing its conclusion, but what that meant for her, for Kyle, and for their future together remained a mystery waiting to be unraveled. Unveiled. Kyle's eyes snapped open, his heightened senses immediately alert to a distant but rapidly approaching sound. He gently shook Iris awake, her luminescent skin pulsing softly in response to his touch. "Helicopters," he whispered urgently, already moving to rouse Mike from his makeshift bed. The old mechanic was on his feet in seconds, years of forest living having honed his instincts. "Back door," he grunted, grabbing a pre-packed bag. "Let's move." They burst out of the cabin into the crisp morning air, the forest around them still shrouded in early dawn mist. Kyle's mind raced as they hurried towards Mike's truck, the sound of rotors growing louder with each passing second. "We need supplies," Kyle said, his ranger training kicking in. "Food, water, camping gear, anything we can grab quickly." Mike nodded, popping open the truck's cargo bed. They worked in frantic silence, loading whatever they could find. Canned goods, water jugs, sleeping bags, and a battered tent. Iris moved with surprising efficiency, her movements fluid and purposeful. Just as Kyle slammed the tailgate shut, a new sound cut through the air. Tires on gravel. A sleek black vehicle emerged from the forest road, coming to a stop mere yards from them. Kyle tensed, ready for a confrontation, but the woman who stepped out didn't fit his mental image of either military or alien threats. "Dr. Elena Rodriguez," she announced, her voice calm but authoritative. Her sharp green eyes assessed the scene quickly. "I'm here to help." Kyle's hand instinctively moved to shield Iris, but the alien gently pushed past him, her gaze locked on the scientist. Dr. Rodriguez's eyes widened as she took in Iris's appearance, particularly the faint glow emanating from her skin. "Fascinating," she breathed, then quickly composed herself. "I lead a research team studying xenobiology. We've been tracking your unique situation. I can offer you protection and resources, but I need your cooperation for my studies." The distant thrum of helicopters grew louder. Kyle exchanged a quick glance with Mike, seeing his own uncertainty reflected in the older man's eyes. Time was running out. "What kind of cooperation?" Kyle asked warily. "Nothing invasive," Dr. Rodriguez assured him. "Observation, some basic tests. In return, we can keep you safe from both your pursuers and help you understand what's happening." A branch snapped in the forest behind them. Kyle's enhanced hearing picked up the faint rustle of movement. Someone was closing in. He made a split-second decision. "Fine," he said, "but we do this on our terms." Dr. Rodriguez nodded briskly. "Of course. Now, we need to move. Your truck is too easy to track. We'll take my vehicle." As if on cue, the side of the black vehicle slid open, revealing an interior that looked more like a mobile laboratory than a simple RV. Kyle helped Iris inside, marveling at the array of advanced equipment. "Mike," Kyle started, turning to his old friend, but the mechanic cut him off. "I'll be fine, kid," Mike said gruffly. "You two need to go. I'll lead them on a wild goose chase." Before Kyle could protest, Mike clapped him on the shoulder and headed for his truck. The old engine roared to life, and Mike peeled away, kicking up a cloud of dust. Dr. Rodriguez ushered them into the vehicle. "Strap in," she instructed, sliding into the driver's seat. "This might get bumpy." As they pulled away from the cabin, Kyle caught a glimpse of movement in his peripheral vision. A group of figures, clad in what looked like advanced combat gear, burst from the tree line. Their otherworldly weapons glinted in the early morning light. "Zax," Kyle breathed, recognizing the Vidayan team's leader. Dr. Rodriguez punched a series of buttons on the dashboard. The vehicle's exterior shimmered, and suddenly, the forest around them seemed to bend and warp. "Cloaking technology," the scientist explained, a hint of pride in her voice. "We should be undetectable now." As they sped away from the cabin, leaving Zax and his team behind, Kyle felt a mix of relief and apprehension wash over him. He turned to Iris, who was staring out at the window with a look of wonder on her increasingly human-like face. "You okay?" he asked softly. Iris nodded, interlacing her fingers with his. Her skin pulsed with a soft, comforting glow. Dr. Rodriguez's voice came from the front. "I'd like to begin some preliminary examinations, if you're willing. Nothing invasive, just some scans and observations." Kyle hesitated, then nodded. As the vehicle wound its way deeper into the forest, he watched Dr. Rodriguez set up her equipment, her movements precise and efficient. Outside, the world blurred past, hidden behind their technological cloak. They were embarking on a journey into the unknown, with forces both human and alien in pursuit. As Dr. Rodriguez began her examination, Kyle couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of a much larger adventure, one that would not only change his and Iris's lives, but potentially reshape the relationship between humans and the cosmos itself. As Dr. Rodriguez's vehicle wound its way deeper into the forest, the air around them grew hazy with smoke. Kyle's heightened senses picked up the acrid scent before the others noticed it. "Something's burning," he said, sitting up straighter. Dr. Rodriguez glanced at her instruments, her brow furrowing. "Forest fire. It's spreading rapidly in our direction." The vehicle lurched as she swerved to avoid a falling branch. Outside, the once lush greenery had given way to an apocalyptic landscape of orange flames and billowing smoke. "We need to find shelter," Kyle said, his ranger instincts kicking in. "This vehicle won't protect us for long." As if on cue, a deafening crack split the air. A massive tree crashed down in front of them, forcing Dr. Rodriguez to slam on the brakes. The sudden stop sent equipment sliding across the floor. "The cloaking system is failing," she announced, her fingers flying over the controls. "We're exposed." Kyle helped Iris to her feet, noting how her skin pulsed with an even brighter glow in response to the danger. He could feel a strange tingling sensation spreading through his own body, but pushed the thought aside. "Everyone out," he ordered. "We'll have to continue on foot." They scrambled from the vehicle, the heat hitting them like a physical force. Kyle took point, using his enhanced vision to navigate through the thickening smoke. Iris stayed close behind him, her luminescence providing a beacon for the others to follow. As they trudged through the burning forest, Kyle's mind raced. The fire was spreading too quickly, cutting off their escape routes. They needed a safe haven, and fast. That's when he spotted it, a skeletal silhouette rising above the tree line. "There," he called out, pointing. "A fire lookout tower. It's our best shot." They pushed on, the heat intensifying with each step. Kyle could hear Dr. Rodriguez and her team wheezing behind him, struggling with the smoke-filled air. He turned to check on them and stumbled, a wave of dizziness washing over him. Iris caught his arm, steadying him. Her touch sent a jolt through his system, momentarily clearing his head. He nodded gratefully, noticing for the first time that her features seemed more defined, more human-like than before. As they reached the base of the tower, Dr. Rodriguez pulled out a small medical kit. "You're both showing signs of distress," she said, her voice hoarse from the smoke. "Let me administer some emergency treatment before we climb." Kyle wanted to argue, to push on, but another wave of dizziness made him reconsider. He nodded, allowing the scientist to inject him with a cocktail of stabilizers and oxygen boosters. Iris received a similar treatment, tailored to her unique physiology. The climb up the tower was arduous. The metal was hot to the touch, and the smoke grew thicker as they ascended. By the time they reached the top, even Kyle was gasping for air. Inside the lookout, Dr. Rodriguez immediately set up her remaining equipment. Her eyes widened as she studied the readouts. "This is unprecedented," she muttered, more to herself than the others. "The hybridization process, it's accelerating exponentially." Kyle felt a surge of heat course through his body, different from the external fire. He looked at his hands, shocked to see a faint glow beginning to emanate from his skin. Iris moved closer, her own luminescence intensifying. The air between them seemed to crackle with energy. Kyle felt an overwhelming urge to touch her, to merge with her light. Dr. Rodriguez's voice seemed to come from far away. "The danger, the adrenaline, it's triggering another mating cycle, and this time it's affecting you both." Kyle tried to focus on the scientist's words, but Iris's presence consumed his senses. Her scent, her glow, the very air around her pulled at him with an irresistible force. We should. Kyle struggled to form coherent thoughts as Iris's hands found his. Their bioluminescence merged, creating a dazzling display that lit up the entire lookout. Kyle was vaguely aware of Dr. Rodriguez and her team averting their eyes, but he couldn't bring himself to care. As Kyle and Iris came together, lost in their shared transformation, they were oblivious to the chaos their union had triggered. Their combined glow had penetrated the remnants of Dr. Rodriguez's cloaking technology, broadcasting their location like a beacon to the forces converging on their position. At the base of the tower, Zax and his Vidian team arrived first, their advanced fire suppression technology creating a safe corridor through the inferno. They began their ascent, unaware of the human military forces approaching from the other side. As dawn broke, casting an eerie glow through the smoke-filled sky, Kyle and Iris lay intertwined, their bodies pulsing with shared light. Dr. Rodriguez worked frantically nearby, her instruments recording the unprecedented changes in their biology. "We need to stabilize them," she announced to her team. "The genetic flux is too extreme. Without intervention, their bodies could burn out." As she prepared a series of injections, the sound of boots on metal stairs echoed from below. The Vidian extraction team was closing in. Kyle stirred, his ranger instincts cutting through the haze of transformation. He struggled to his feet, every movement sending waves of discomfort through his changing body. "We need a plan," he gasped, scanning the lookout for anything they could use. His gaze fell on a coil of old cable in the corner, and a desperate idea began to form. With trembling hands, he grabbed the cable and moved to the window, looking out at the ridge in the distance. "Zipline," he managed to say, gesturing weakly. "It's our only chance." As Dr. Rodriguez and her team hurried to construct the makeshift escape route, the confrontation below reached a critical point. Zax's team encountered Colonel Hartley's forces at the base of the tower, creating a tense standoff. Kyle could hear snippets of their heated exchange carried up by the wind. Zax's attempts at diplomacy met Colonel Hartley's cold purpose to complete his mission at any cost. Time was running out. The forest fire raged ever closer. The standoff below threatened to erupt into violence at any moment, and Kyle and Iris's bodies continued to struggle with their accelerated transformation. As Dr. Rodriguez administered another round of stabilizing injections, Kyle forced himself to focus. He grabbed the makeshift harness they had cobbled together and turned to Iris. "Ready?" he asked, his voice rough but determined. Iris nodded, her newly human-like features set in a mask of dedication. As they prepared to launch themselves into the unknown, Kyle knew that whatever came next, they would face it together. The zipline awaited, a tenuous lifeline stretching out over the burning forest. Behind them, the sounds of conflict grew louder as the two opposing forces began to clash. Ahead lay uncertainty, but also the promise of escape. With one last shared look, Kyle and Iris stepped to the edge of the lookout, their merged bioluminescence casting a defiant glow against the encroaching flames. The fate of their future, and perhaps that of human-alien relations, hung literally by a thread as they prepared to take the plunge into the fiery unknown. Abyss! Kyle tightened his grip on Iris, his heart pounding as they launched themselves off the lookout tower. The makeshift zipline groaned under their combined weight, but held firm as they hurtled through the smoke-filled air. Their merged bioluminescence cut through the haze, creating a trail of light that streaked across the burning forest. Behind them, Dr. Rodriguez and her team scrambled to follow, clutching vital research equipment and medical supplies. The scientist's face was a mask of willpower as she clipped herself to the line and pushed off from the tower. As they soared over the inferno below, Kyle's enhanced hearing picked up the sounds of conflict erupting at the base of the tower. Alien energy weapons crackled, and human firearms thundered, creating a cacophony of war that echoed through the valley. Halfway across the zipline, a searing pain shot through Kyle's body. He gasped, nearly losing his grip on Iris. His skin felt like it was on fire, far more intense than the heat from the blaze below. Iris's eyes widened in shared agony, her own transformation accelerating in response to the danger and adrenaline. They hit the ground hard at the far end of the zipline, rolling to absorb the impact. Kyle staggered to his feet, pulling Iris up beside him. He turned back to help Dr. Rodriguez, but froze in horror as he saw the zipline mechanism at the tower collapse under the strain. The scientist and one of her assistants dangled precariously over the burning forest, their weight causing the line to sag dangerously. Without thinking, Kyle sprinted towards them, his legs carrying him faster than he thought possible. "Hold on!" he shouted, leaping into the air. To his amazement, he soared far higher and farther than any human should be able to. He grabbed Dr. Rodriguez and her assistant in midair, the heat from the fire below barely registering on his altered skin. With a grunt of effort, Kyle landed back near Iris, setting the scientist and her assistant down safely. Dr. Rodriguez stared at him in awe, her scientific curiosity momentarily overriding her fear. "Remarkable," she breathed, reaching out to touch Kyle's glowing skin. "The hybridization process is advancing at an unprecedented rate." A loud crack from the forest snapped them back to reality. Colonel Hartley's voice carried through the trees, barking orders to his men. From the other direction came the distinctive hum of Vidian energy weapons. "We need to move," Kyle said, grabbing Iris's hand. "Now!" They plunged into the forest, weaving between burning trees and leaping over fallen logs. Kyle's enhanced senses guided them through the smoke, avoiding the worst of the fire. Behind them, the sounds of battle grew more intense as Zax's team engaged the human forces. Suddenly, the sky opened up. Fat raindrops pelted down, quickly turning into a torrential downpour. Steam hissed up from the burning forest as the rain doused the flames. Kyle felt a surge of relief, thinking the rain would cover their tracks and deter their pursuers. But as the water soaked through his clothes and ran down his skin, a new sensation overtook him. Every raindrop felt like a jolt of electricity, sending waves of energy coursing through his body. Besides him, Iris gasped, her skin pulsing with an intense glow. "The rain," Dr. Rodriguez said, her voice filled with wonder and concern. "It's accelerating the hybridization process." Kyle looked down at his hands, watching in fascination as his skin texture shifted, becoming smoother and taking on a faint, opalescent sheen. Iris's transformation was even more pronounced, her features becoming more defined and human-like with each passing second. They pressed on through the rain-soaked forest, the downpour reducing visibility to mere feet in front of them. Kyle's heightened senses were their saving grace, allowing him to navigate the treacherous terrain and avoid stumbling into their pursuers. After what felt like hours of relentless flight, they emerged from the dense forest into a small clearing. Looming before them was the entrance to an old mining complex, its rusted gates hanging open like a gaping maw. "We can lose them in there," Kyle said, gesturing towards the dark opening. Dr. Rodriguez hesitated. "The structural integrity of those tunnels could be compromised. It's risky." A distant shout made the decision for them. Kyle ushered the group into the mine entrance, the cool darkness enveloping them as they left the rain behind. As their eyes adjusted to the gloom, Kyle and Iris's bioluminescence provided a soft, pulsing light. They made their way deeper into the complex, the sounds of their pursuers fading behind them. The tunnels twisted and turned, forming a labyrinth that even Kyle's enhanced senses struggled to navigate. Just as they were beginning to fear they'd become hopelessly lost, a flicker of light caught their attention. "Hello there," a voice called out, causing the group to freeze in their tracks. "Looks like you folks could use some help." A man stepped into view, his face illuminated by an old-fashioned lantern. He wore a worn flannel shirt and a baseball cap adorned with a UFO patch. Behind him, several other figures emerged from the shadows, all watching Kyle and Iris with a mix of awe and excitement. "Name's Jack Harper," the man said, extending a hand, "and I think you've just stumbled into the discovery of a lifetime." Kyle hesitated, then shook Jack's hand. As he did, his bioluminescence flared, casting a brilliant glow throughout the tunnel. Jack's eyes widened, a grin spreading across his face. "Oh yeah," he said, nodding to his companions. "They're the real deal, all right. Come on, folks, we've got a lot to talk about, and not much time to do it." As Jack led them deeper into the mine, Kyle couldn't shake the feeling that they were trading one danger for another. But with Zach's and Colonel Hartley's forces closing in, they had little choice but to trust this strange group of conspiracy theorists and hope for the best. The tunnels opened up into a larger cavern, revealing a hidden underground facility filled with a mishmash of old government equipment and jury-rigged alien tech. As they entered, Iris suddenly doubled over, a wave of intense pheromones washing over the group. Kyle moved to support her, his own body reacting to the surge of alien biochemistry. He looked up to see Jack and several other men eyeing Iris with sudden predatory interest. "Back off," Kyle growled, his protective instincts flaring along with his bioluminescence. As tension filled the air, a low hum began to emanate from the depths of the facility. Iris's glow pulsed in response, creating a rhythmic light show that seemed to awaken long-dormant machinery around them. Screens flickered to life, and strange alien symbols began scrolling across them. The conspiracy theorists watched in amazement as their years of preparation and belief were suddenly, undeniably validated. "It's all true," Jack whispered, his eyes wide with wonder. "Everything we've been saying for years, it's all real." Before anyone could respond, a high-pitched whine cut through the air. Kyle's enhanced hearing picked up the sound of approaching vehicles and shouting voices from above. "They've found us," Dr. Rodriguez said, her face pale with fear. As the group looked to Kyle for guidance, he realized that the choices he made in the next few moments would shape not just their fate, but potentially the future of human-alien relations. With Iris at his side, transformed but standing strong, he took a deep breath and prepared to face whatever came next. As Kyle prepared to face the unknown threats converging on their position, a low hum filled the air. The ancient machinery around them whirred to life, screens flickering with alien symbols. Iris gasped, her bioluminescence pulsing in sync with the facility's awakening systems. "What's happening?" Dr. Rodriguez asked, her scientific curiosity momentarily overriding her fear. Before anyone could respond, Iris's eyes widened. I can feel it," she whispered, her voice filled with awe. "The technology, it's connecting with me somehow." Kyle watched in amazement as Iris's glow intensified, her body seeming to resonate with the energy flowing through the complex. She raised her hand, and a shimmering barrier of energy sprang to life around the perimeter of the facility. Jack Harper let out a low whistle. "Well, I'll be damned. Looks like we've got ourselves a proper alien force field." The activation of the barrier bought them a temporary reprieve, but Kyle could see the strain it was putting on Iris. Her features continued to shift, the hybridization process accelerating under the stress. "Dr. Rodriguez," Kyle said urgently, "we need to use this equipment to analyze what's happening to us. Can you figure it out?" The scientist nodded, her fingers already flying over the alien console. "I'll do my best. This technology is light years beyond anything I've ever seen, but the principles seem surprisingly compatible." As Dr. Rodriguez worked, Kyle became aware of a growing tension within the group of conspiracy theorists. Some watched Iris with wonder, while others eyed her with increasing suspicion and fear. One man, his face twisted with paranoia, stepped forward. "We can't trust them," he growled, pointing at Kyle and Iris. "They're not human anymore. They're a threat." Jack tried to calm his follower. "Easy, Eric. We don't know what's going on here. Let's not do anything rash." But Eric wasn't listening. He lunged towards Iris, his hands outstretched to grab her. Kyle reacted instinctively, his enhanced reflexes allowing him to intercept the attack. He grappled with Eric, surprised by his own strength, as he easily subdued the man. "That's enough!" Kyle shouted, his voice carrying an authority that surprised even him. "We're all in this together now, whether you like it or not." Dr. Rodriguez's excited voice cut through the tension. "Kyle, Iris, you need to see this. The hybridization process. It's creating a stable human Vidian genome. Your DNA is perfectly balanced between both species." The implications of this discovery hung in the air, but before anyone could fully process it, a new threat emerged. The energy barrier flickered, sections of it weakening under an unseen assault. "They're breaking through," Jack yelled, pointing to a display showing multiple approaching signals. Kyle's enhanced hearing picked up the sound of energy weapons and human voices. "Zax and Colonel Hartley," he said grimly. "They're both here." Suddenly, a new presence made itself known. A voice, distinctly alien yet understandable, echoed through the complex's communication system. "Attention unauthorized personnel. This is Captain Lyra of the Vidian scout ship Nolastron. We have detected the activation of a long-lost outpost. Explain yourselves immediately." The situation was spiraling out of control. Kyle looked to Iris, seeing his own mix of fear and dedication reflected in her eyes. She nodded, understanding, passing between them without words. Iris closed her eyes, concentrating on her connection to the facility. The alien symbols on the screens began to shift, responding to her unspoken commands. A hidden door slid open, revealing a chamber filled with stasis pods. "By the stars," Dr. Rodriguez breathed, examining the pods. "This is a genetic repository, a safeguard against extinction." The revelation hit Kyle like a physical blow. They weren't just dealing with their own transformation anymore. The fate of an entire species might rest in their hands. As the gravity of their situation sank in, the energy barrier finally gave way. Zax's extraction team poured into the complex from one side, while Colonel Hartley's forces breached from another. Eric and his followers, driven by fear and confusion, began smashing equipment in a desperate attempt to destroy the alien technology. In the midst of the chaos, Kyle and Iris stood side by side, their bodies continuing to evolve, caught between multiple converging forces. The Vidian scout ship loomed ever closer, adding yet another unpredictable element to the explosive situation. Kyle's ranger training kicked in, his mind racing to find a way out of this impossible scenario. But as he looked at Iris, saw the tenacity in her eyes, and felt the power humming through both of their changing bodies, he realized that conventional tactics wouldn't be enough. They were something new, something that had never existed before. And in that uniqueness, Kyle sensed, lay their only hope of navigating the storm that was about to break over them all. As Kyle braced himself for the storm about to break over them, the energy barrier surrounding the complex flickered and failed. The sudden collapse sent a shockwave through the facility, knocking everyone off balance. Colonel Hartley's forces burst through one entrance, their weapons trained on the occupants. Simultaneously, Zax and his Vidian extraction team poured in from another direction, their alien technology humming with power. The clash of human and alien forces sparked chaos. Energy weapons discharged, illuminating the cavern with flashes of eerie light. The conspiracy theorists scattered, some cowering behind equipment while others, like Eric, lashed out in fear and anger. Amidst the mayhem, a low thrumming filled the air. Kyle watched in amazement as panels slid open throughout the complex, revealing sleek glowing drones. These ancient sentinels rose into the air, their forms pulsing with the same bioluminescence that now coursed through his and Iris's bodies. The drones moved with purpose, forming a protective barrier around Kyle and Iris. They fired precise energy bursts, pushing back both human and Vidian attackers without causing serious harm. "Kyle!" Dr. Rodriguez's voice cut through the din. She stood by the stasis pod chamber, her face etched with urgency. The genetic samples are destabilizing. We're losing them. Kyle locked eyes with Iris, a silent understanding passing between them. They moved as one, weaving through the battlefield towards the chamber. The drones adjusted their formation, clearing a path and shielding them from stray fire. As they reached the stasis pods, Kyle could see the ancient technology sputtering and failing. The preservative fluid inside the pods bubbled ominously, threatening to destroy millennia of genetic data. Kyle placed his hands on the control panel, feeling a surge of energy course through him. Beside him, Iris did the same. Their combined bioluminescence intensified, creating a dazzling light show that momentarily halted the fighting around them. Instinctively, Kyle knew what to do. He let his consciousness merge with the alien technology, guiding the system's energy flow. Iris matched his movements, her actions perfectly complementing his own. Together, they stabilized the failing stasis pods, their efforts creating a hypnotic dance of light and energy. The sudden quiet was broken by Zax's voice. "Stop! Everyone, hold your fire!" The Vidian commander approached Kyle and Iris, his alien features set in a grave expression. "What you're preserving," Zax explained, his voice carrying across the now silent chamber, "is the last hope for my species. Our genetic diversity has dwindled to a critical point. Without the samples in this outpost, the Vidian race faces extinction." Colonel Hartley lowered his weapon, his tactical mind reassessing the situation. "Is this true?" he asked, addressing both Zax and Dr. Rodriguez. The scientist nodded, her eyes wide with the implications of the discovery. "If what he's saying is accurate, this facility isn't just a piece of alien technology, it's a genetic ark preserving the biological heritage of an entire civilization." Before anyone could respond, a new voice echoed through the complex. "This is Captain Lyra of the Vidian scout ship Nolestrin. We're landing now and request immediate access to the facility." Moments later, Captain Lyra entered the chamber, flanked by Vidian medical personnel. She carried a sleek device that pulsed with energy. "This stabilizer can help complete your transformation," she said, addressing Kyle and Iris directly. "In exchange, we ask for access to the genetic repository." As negotiations began between the human and Vidian leaders, Jack Harper and his loyal followers approached Dr. Rodriguez. "We want to help," Jack said, his earlier suspicion replaced by dedication. "Tell us what we can do to protect this place." Eric and his rogue faction, however, weren't ready to accept the situation. They began smashing equipment, trying to destroy what they still saw as a threat to humanity. Jack and his team moved quickly to stop them, securing the saboteurs with the help of Colonel Hartley's men. Throughout the complex, the combined efforts of humans and Vidians began to bear fruit. As Kyle and Iris interfaced with the alien technology, their hybrid DNA allowing for unprecedented access, Dr. Rodriguez made a startling discovery. "The merger of Vidian and human genetic material," she announced, her voice filled with excitement. "It's creating potential cures for diseases that have plagued humanity for centuries, and it might just solve the Vidian genetic crisis as well." As the implications of this discovery sank in, Kyle and Iris felt their bodies enter the final stage of transformation. Their merged human Vidian DNA stabilized, granting them abilities that transcended both species. They could now interface directly with the alien technology, accelerating the process of retrieving and preserving the crucial genetic data. The ancient outpost buzzed with activity as humans and Vidians worked side by side, their former hostilities set aside in the face of mutual benefit. But even as progress was made within the facility, Kyle and Iris knew that greater challenges lay ahead. Reports were already leaking to the outside world. Global tensions were rising as governments and military forces worldwide prepared for potential conflict. The future of human-Vidian relations hung in the balance, with Kyle and Iris standing at the crucial intersection between two worlds. As they prepared to address representatives from both species, Kyle took Iris's hand, feeling the pulse of their shared biology. Whatever came next, they would face it together, bridging the gap between human and alien, and charting a course for a future neither of them could have imagined possible. As they stood hand in hand, the ancient outpost around them hummed with newfound energy and purpose. The facility's advanced communication systems suddenly flickered to life, holographic displays materializing throughout the chamber. Kyle and Iris exchanged a surprised glance as they realized their hybrid physiology had inadvertently activated the long-dormant technology. "Incredible," Dr. Rodriguez breathed, her eyes wide with wonder as she approached one of the shimmering displays. "This appears to be a real-time communication interface. We could potentially connect with, well, anyone." Before anyone could respond, the largest display crackled with static, before resolving into the stern face of a high-ranking military official. "This is General Simmons of the United Nations Security Council. We've detected unprecedented energy signatures from your location. Explain yourselves immediately." Colonel Hartley stepped forward, his posture rigid. "General, this is Colonel Hartley. The situation here is complex. We've made contact with an alien species called the Vidians and discovered an ancient outpost on Earth. I recommend we establish a secure line for a full briefing." As Hartley began relaying the events to his superiors, Captain Lyra approached Kyle and Iris. "Your hybrid physiology has unlocked systems we thought lost for millennia," she said, her voice filled with a mixture of awe and concern. "The High Council must be informed of these developments." Kyle nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. "We'll need to mediate between all parties involved. Iris, are you ready for this?" Iris squeezed his hand, her bioluminescence pulsing in sync with his. "Together," she said simply, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. Over the next few hours, the ancient alien outpost transformed into an impromptu diplomatic headquarters. Holographic projections flickered throughout the chamber as world leaders, Vidian representatives, and UN officials engaged in heated discussions. Kyle and Iris found themselves at the center of it all, their unique status as human-Vidian hybrids, making them invaluable intermediaries. Dr. Rodriguez, now working alongside a team of Vidian scientists, continued to study Kyle and Iris's physiology. Her voice cut through the din of negotiations, excitement evident in her tone. "The genetic markers in their DNA, it's astounding. We're seeing potential solutions to diseases that have plagued humanity for centuries. And the Vidian genetic crisis, we might have just found the key to solving it." This announcement sent a ripple through the assembled diplomats. Earth's leaders began pushing for accelerated cooperation, while the Vidian representatives conferred urgently among themselves. Colonel Hartley, his tactical mind already assessing the potential benefits, addressed the holographic projection of his superiors. "General, I recommend we establish a joint human-Vidian research initiative immediately. This outpost could serve as neutral ground for scientific exchange." As discussions continued, Kyle and Iris felt a strange sensation wash over them. Their bioluminescence intensified, and suddenly they could hear each other's thoughts as clearly as spoken words. "Kyle, are you—" Iris's mental voice trailed off, filled with a mixture of wonder and confusion. "I can hear you," Kyle replied silently, his eyes widening. "This could change everything." Their newfound telepathic ability proved crucial in the ongoing negotiations. Complex Vidian concepts that defied easy translation could now be instantly conveyed to the human representatives through Kyle and Iris's unique connection. Captain Lyra, observing the couple's enhanced abilities, stepped forward with a proposal. "In light of these developments, the Vidian High Council offers to provide advanced medical technology to Earth in exchange for access to human genetic diversity." This offer sent shockwaves through the human delegations. Some nations eagerly embraced the possibility, while others expressed deep reservations about sharing human genetic material with an alien species. As the debate raged on, Jack Harper and his team of former conspiracy theorists found themselves with a new purpose. Under Dr. Rodriguez's supervision, they began cataloging the vast array of alien technology within the outpost. "Dr. Rodriguez," Jack called out, his voice filled with excitement. "You need to see this. We've found what looks like an ancient archive." The holographic displays flickered, showing images of early human civilizations alongside Vidian script. Dr. Rodriguez's eyes widened as she translated the alien text. This changes everything we thought we knew about human history. The Vidians were here thousands of years ago, They influenced our earliest civilizations. As this revelation spread, Kyle and Iris exchanged a knowing look. The future of human-Vidian relations now rested on their shoulders. They stepped forward, ready to address the assembled representatives of both species, their entwined hands glowing with shared bioluminescence. The ancient outpost, once abandoned and forgotten, now pulsed with the energy of two civilizations on the brink of a new era. As Kyle opened his mouth to speak, the weight of history, both human and Vidian, hung in the air, waiting to be shaped by the words of these two unlikely ambassadors. Ambassadors. The fate of two species hung on their words. Representatives of Earth and Vidia, Kyle began, his voice steady despite the enormity of the moment. We stand at a crossroads of history. The decisions we make here will shape the future of both our civilizations. Iris continued seamlessly, her bioluminescence pulsing in harmony with Kyle's. We propose the formation of an Earth-Vidian Cooperation Council, or EVCC, to oversee our joint efforts and ensure mutual benefit for both species. The chamber erupted in a flurry of discussion. World leaders conferred urgently with their advisors, while Vidian delegates engaged in rapid-fire exchanges in their native tongue. Kyle and Iris, their newfound telepathic abilities in full force, worked tirelessly to bridge communication gaps and clarify complex concepts. As the deliberations continued, Harmony Base, the name now given to the ancient alien outpost, buzzed with activity. Dr. Rodriguez and her team of human and Vidian scientists pored over the genetic data retrieved from the Stasis pods, their excitement palpable as they uncovered potential breakthroughs. Colonel Hartley, ever vigilant, coordinated with Vidian security forces to establish a robust defensive perimeter around the facility. The colonel's strategic mind was already considering the global implications of this alliance, and he was determined to protect the fragile peace they had achieved. Days passed in a whirlwind of negotiations, scientific discoveries, and cultural exchanges. Kyle and Iris found themselves at the center of it all, their hybrid physiology making them the perfect bridges between human and Vidian biology and technology. As the inaugural session of the EVCC convened, Kyle and Iris took their places at the head of the chamber. The room was filled with an air of anticipation and nervous energy. Earth's most influential leaders sat side by side with Vidian dignitaries, their differences in appearance highlighting the monumental nature of this gathering. Kyle cleared his throat, the sound echoing in the suddenly quiet room. Today, we take the first steps towards a future of cooperation and mutual understanding. The EVCC will serve as the foundation for our shared progress, ensuring that the benefits of our alliance are distributed fairly among both species. As Kyle spoke, Iris felt a sudden surge of energy coursing through her body. She glanced at Kyle, seeing the same surprised recognition in his eyes. Without warning, the central chamber of Harmony Base began to transform. Panels slid open in the walls and floor, revealing hidden compartments filled with advanced Vidian technology. Holographic displays sprang to life, showcasing a vast archive of scientific knowledge and historical records. Captain Lyra stepped forward, her eyes wide with wonder. This is beyond anything we could have imagined. The archives of our ancestors, preserved for millennia, waiting for the right moment to be unveiled. Dr. Rodriguez, who had been observing from the sidelines, rushed to examine the newly revealed technology. This changes everything, she breathed, her fingers dancing over a holographic interface. The medical applications alone could revolutionize healthcare on Earth. As the delegates marveled at the hidden treasures of Harmony Base, a commotion outside the chamber caught everyone's attention. Colonel Hartley's voice crackled over the communication system. Security breach at the perimeter. Hostile forces attempting to enter the facility. Kyle and Iris exchanged a glance, their telepathic link buzzing with shared concern. They could sense the fear and willpower emanating from the intruders, a group of human extremists led by a charismatic figure named Marcus Thorne. We need to stop them, Iris said, her voice filled with willpower. If they disrupt these negotiations, everything we've worked for could be lost. Kyle nodded, already moving towards the exit. Let's go. We can use our abilities to help coordinate the defense. As they raced through the corridors of Harmony Base, Kyle and Iris could hear the sounds of conflict growing louder. They emerged onto a balcony overlooking the main entrance, where Colonel Hartley's security team was engaged in a tense standoff with the protesters. Marcus Thorne stood at the front of the crowd, his voice booming across the open space. "We will not allow our planet to be overrun by alien invaders. Humanity must stand alone." Kyle stepped forward, his voice amplified by the base's communication systems. "Marcus Thorne, we are not here to conquer or invade. We seek cooperation and mutual benefit. Please, stand down and let us explain." For a moment, it seemed as if Kyle's words might have an effect. But then a shot rang out, and chaos erupted. Colonel Hartley's team moved swiftly, working in perfect coordination with the Vidian peacekeepers to contain the situation. Kyle and Iris focused their newfound abilities, using their enhanced perception to identify key agitators in the crowd and guide the security forces. Within minutes, the attack was repelled, with minimal injuries on both sides. As the dust settled, Captain Lyra approached Kyle and Iris, her expression grave. "This incident highlights the challenges we face. Perhaps it's time we discussed implementing Vidian defensive technology around key Earth locations." The suggestion sent ripples through the assembled human delegates. Some nodded in agreement, seeing the need for enhanced security. Others bristled at the implication, fearing a loss of Earth's sovereignty. Kyle raised his hands, calling for calm. "This is exactly why the EVCC is so important. We need a forum to discuss these complex issues and find solutions that work for everyone." As they made their way back to the central chamber, Kyle and Iris could sense the tension in the air. The attack had shaken the confidence of many delegates, and the path forward seemed uncertain. But as they entered the room, they were met with a sight that rekindled their hope. Dr. Rodriguez stood at the center of a group of human and Vidian scientists, her face alight with excitement. "Kyle, Iris, you need to see this," she called out. "We've made a breakthrough in adapting Vidian medical technology for human use. This could be the key to curing dozens of Earth's most devastating diseases." As the scientists began to present their findings, Kyle and Iris exchanged a relieved smile. Despite the challenges they faced, progress was being made. The future of human-Vidian relations remained uncertain, but in that moment, they allowed themselves to feel a glimmer of optimism. The EVCC session resumed, with delegates from both species now more determined than ever to find common ground. As discussions of medical cooperation and technology exchange filled the chamber, Kyle and Iris knew that their work was nowhere near the end. The road ahead would be challenging, but they were ready to face whatever came next, united in their desire to bridge the gap between their two worlds. As discussions of medical cooperation and technology exchange filled the chamber, Kyle and Iris knew that their work was not nearly finished. The path ahead would be challenging, but they were ready to face whatever came next, united in their desire to bridge the gap between their two species. The following days were a whirlwind of activity as the EVCC delegates prepared for the final vote on the historic Human-Vidian Treaty. Kyle and Iris found themselves at the center of it all, working tirelessly to address concerns and build consensus among both human and Vidian representatives. As the day of the vote arrived, tension filled the air of Harmony Base. Kyle and Iris stood before the assembled delegates, their bodies pulsing with a soft, synchronized bioluminescence. Despite their exhaustion, they knew this was their moment to make a final appeal for unity. Kyle's voice rang out clear and strong. "Esteemed delegates, we stand on the precipice of a new era. The choice before us is not just about diplomacy or technological exchange. It's about embracing a future where our species can grow and thrive together." Iris continued seamlessly, her words flowing in perfect harmony with Kyle's. "We have seen firsthand the potential of human-Vidian cooperation. Together, we can achieve feats that neither of our species could accomplish alone." As they spoke, their bioluminescence intensified, casting a mesmerizing glow across the chamber. The delegates watched in awe as the light seemed to weave intricate patterns in the air, illustrating the couple's vision of a cooperative future. Just as the speech reached its crescendo, alarms blared throughout Harmony Base. Colonel Hartley's voice crackled over the communication system. "Security breach. Marcus Thorne's group has infiltrated the facility." Chaos erupted as delegates scrambled for safety. Kyle and Iris exchanged a determined look, their telepathic link buzzing with shared determination. They knew they had to act quickly to prevent the situation from spiraling out of control. Suddenly, a blinding flash of light erupted from the far end of the chamber. A wave of energy pulsed through the air, causing reality itself to waver and distort. Sections of Harmony Base began to flicker in and out of existence, creating a disorienting patchwork of solid matter and empty space. "They've deployed some kind of experimental weapon," Dr. Rodriguez shouted, her eyes wide with fear and fascination. "It's creating localized disruptions in space-time." Kyle and Iris felt a sudden, overwhelming pull towards the base's central systems. Without conscious thought, they allowed their consciousness to merge with the ancient technology. Their bodies glowed with an intense light as they became conduits for the base's power. As one, they focused their combined will on stabilizing the fluctuating areas. The strain was immense, pushing their hybrid bodies to the very limit of endurance. Sweat beaded on their brows as they fought to contain the space-time anomalies threatening to tear Harmony Base apart. Outside the chamber, Colonel Hartley led a joint team of human and Vidian security forces to confront Thorne's group. They found the extremists barricaded in a side corridor, their stolen weapon humming ominously. Hartley stepped forward, his hands raised in a gesture of peace. "Marcus, think about what you're doing. This isn't just about Earth anymore. We have a chance to secure a better future for all of humanity." Thorne's eyes blazed with fanatical intensity. "We don't need alien handouts. Humanity must stand alone." As Hartley kept Thorne distracted with dialogue, Captain Lyra silently maneuvered into position. With a swift, precise movement, she activated a Vidian device that emitted a focused electromagnetic pulse. The stolen weapon sputtered and died, its otherworldly hum fading to silence. Back in the main chamber, Kyle and Iris's struggle to stabilize Harmony Base reached a critical point. Their bodies began to lose physical cohesion, their forms blurring at the edges as they verged on becoming pure energy. Dr. Rodriguez and her Vidian colleagues rushed to complete a hastily developed treatment. They combined cutting-edge human biotechnology with Vidian DNA manipulation techniques, creating a unique solution that could potentially stabilize the hybrid couple. As Hartley's team successfully apprehended Thorne and his followers, Dr. Rodriguez approached Kyle and Iris. Their bodies were now barely visible, little more than two pillars of intensely bright light. With steady hands, she administered the experimental treatment, praying it would be enough to save them. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, with a sudden flash, Kyle and Iris collapsed to the floor. Their bodies rapidly shifted between human, Vidian, and pure energy forms. The transitions happening so quickly, it was impossible to focus on any single state. The assembled delegates watched in stunned silence as the couple's physical forms gradually stabilized. When the metamorphosis finally ended, Kyle and Iris stood before them, transformed. Their bodies now displayed a perfect blend of human and Vidian characteristics, a living bridge between the two species. The dramatic events of the day had a profound impact on the EVCC delegates. As Kyle and Iris recovered, the representatives from both Earth and Vidia reconvened to cast their votes. The atmosphere was charged with a mix of tension and hope as the final tally was announced. "The vote is unanimous," declared the EVCC chairperson, her voice ringing out across the chamber. "The Human-Vidian Treaty is hereby ratified." A wave of cheers and applause swept through Harmony Base, echoing the celebrations erupting around the world as news of the historic agreement spread. Kyle and Iris embraced, their unique bodies glowing with shared joy and relief. As the initial excitement began to settle, Captain Lyra approached the couple with a formal proclamation from the Vidian High Council. "In recognition of your unique status in the role you've played in forging this alliance, you are hereby appointed as permanent ambassadors to the newly established Interstellar Diplomatic Corps." Kyle and Iris accepted the honor with grace, already sensing the weight of responsibility settling on their shoulders. Their first assignment would be to lead the human delegation to the Vidian homeworld, a journey that would open up new horizons for both species. As preparations for their upcoming mission began in earnest, Kyle and Iris found a rare moment of peace. They stood together in Harmony Base's observation dome, watching as the first joint human-Vidian space mission launched from Earth. The sleek spacecraft, a marvel of combined human and Vidian engineering, streaked across the sky, embarking on its journey to establish humanity's first extrasolar colony. Kyle pulled Iris close, their bioluminescent glows merging into a soft, pulsing light. Their bodies resonated in perfect harmony as they shared a deep, passionate kiss. As they parted, Iris's eyes sparkled with a mix of joy and nervous excitement. "Kyle," she whispered, her voice filled with wonder, "there's something I need to tell you."
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.